So you just heard some great information about state-based funding, which I'm not going to go over again, but for anyone who is now watching this for the first time, please feel free to email advocacy@playsportscoalition.org, and you will get not only these slides, but also some additional information about our state-based funding strategy and our successes. I do want to now just kind of tease the Plays in Youth Sports Act, HR 8552, and what that means, and then give Ian and Kate an opportunity to talk about that, as well as give a little bit of an overview as to some of our other pillars of advocacy and our legislative strategy. So this Plays in Youth Sports Act has been something that we've been working with Klein Johnson Group on for a year plus at this point. And it's actually many years in the making, because this was a bill that was originally introduced back in 2015 that was introduced by Ron Kind, who is now soon to be retiring. And so we revamped this bill, working with many people in the youth sports space, YMCA and others, to help kind of shape what this would look like and find a leader, a champion, which we have in Representative Colin Allred, based basically in the Dallas area. And this bill, which was just now introduced into the House about a week and a half ago, would create a $75 million youth sports nonprofit grant program out of the CDC that prioritizes underserved communities. So we're going to get much deeper into what this is and answer any questions that you might have on that. I'm going to put a pin in that for just a minute to talk about some other things as well. In addition to the grants that we're trying to unlock at the state and federal level, we are spending more time on place-based equity as well, building relationships both at the legislative level, but also coalitions and organizations that are focused on this, supporting their work and seeing where we can be a value add. And then there's also family-based incentives for play, which we're looking to support as well. And so ultimately, if there are opportunities for us to get involved in things that fit into these buckets, we would love for you to surface them, and we will do our best to support the work that you're all doing, as well as add value based on the things that we're going to push forward with the power of this coalition as a whole. You can see this is a screen grab from our new website, playsportscoalition.org, newly designed, so take a look there. And I will also share out, as it relates to the Plays Act, Colin Allred's press release, the bill itself from congress.gov, and our press release through Medium from the Play Sports Coalition as well. With that, I'm going to give Ian and Kate an opportunity to introduce themselves and speak a little bit more specifically about the Plays Act and youth sports, and then we can open it up for anyone to ask questions as well. Kate, or Ian, did you want to share your screen? Do you want me to stop my share?
Yeah, if you could, Kate has a screen share.
Thank you. Let's hope this works. And I apologize, my slides are not as pretty as Jared's. My entire computer got wiped out, but I put together the draft version, if you will. So it has no flattery on it, but we're here for the text, right? So let me know if you have any questions that I'm sorry it's not pretty. So Klein Johnson Group has been working for the past year, as Jared mentioned, trying to help facilitate getting more attention and money to youth sports. And one of the bills, like Jared had mentioned, is the revamped Kind bill. This one is HR 8852. There is no text out yet because obviously Legislative Council on the Hill is very busy with reconciliation text. So it has not been posted publicly yet, but if you'd like a copy of the bill, happy to send that out. And with that, there is no summary, but that should be coming too. So what we're hoping to do is just guide you through exactly what this bill does. And this is a huge win, I think, for the advocacy efforts of the Play Sports Coalition. So as you know, the Department of Education has some funding that many of your organizations can take advantage of for after school activities, some things that help, with some of the sports oriented organizations that have to do a lot with the educational side of it. This bill is specifically, it's a whole different new grant program at the Health and Human Services through the Centers of Disease and Prevention. So this is CDC under HHS. It's a $75 million a year grant program, and it's specifically for youth sports organizations. So like I said, it establishes the grant program at HHS specifically for your organizations. And the way that it would be kind of laid out is that CDC has a board that we will help make sure that key people are on this board. And what they help do is choose based on the applicants that come in. And obviously there'll be implementation instructions that go should this bill pass. But essentially, $15 million will go across the United States for national organizations. $50 million will go to states to divvy out to specific state organizations and nonprofits. All of them have to be nonprofits. And then each of the sub grants, I don't know if you can see this, but it's 2.5 for the national organizations and 250,000 for regional and local organizations. So the point of this, or the opportunity here, is for smaller amounts of money to go to more local organizations that are on the ground that need help, garnering additional coaches so that, in underserved communities, there can be more opportunities for kids to go play. It can go to getting, 10 or 15 kids uniforms. It can go to, creating a new blacktop so that one community in the West can have a blacktop so that they can play basketball. I mean, as long as it is going to help get more kids into youth sports, then it will be applicable. And then Ian, I don't know if you want to talk through some of the specific scope.
Sure. So as mentioned here, the language directs the DHS to establish the organization grants program to award these grants out to national nonprofit organizations with the goal of improving the health and positive youth development impacts of youth sports participation, and then to establish this grant selection board to select grant recipients. And as Kate referenced, we'll have a role in trying to encourage them to make logical selections. Not that the agencies wouldn't do that, but certainly we'll want to try to weigh in with suggestions for who should be on that type of board. And then essentially, what the purpose of the grants is. And let me just also pause here for a moment to explain, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the congressional process, the difference between authorization and appropriation. So the funding here that Kate just referenced is an authorization. So if this language was to be passed into law, if this bill passed or was attached to another moving vehicle and became law, this would simply be direction to the Appropriations Committee that this program should be funded at these levels. The Appropriations Committee will still have to then take that recommendation and make a final decision about how much funding is appropriated for that purpose. And they do that each year. So for example, we're in fiscal year 23 right now, which will be wrapping up in about 2 months. And then they'll begin the process of beginning the development of the fiscal year 24 appropriations bills. The president's budget will also include recommendations and guidelines to the Appropriations Committee in terms of what he intends. And so we'll want to do some of the legwork with the Appropriations Committee and with the administration should this language become law. Because again, it says 75 million, but until we actually get the Appropriations Committee to provide that money, the check will not be cut. So I just wanted to give that additional context for those that may not be following the congressional budget process as closely. But essentially, the purpose here is for these grants to be used to award the sub-grantees that Kate referenced, regional and local nonprofit youth sports organizations. The scope of what those dollars would be used for are the listed here. So activities that promote effectiveness of physical activities or youth sports, including training and certification program for coaches, developing and implementing coaching guidelines, an athlete code of conduct and instruction, coaching and volunteer retention efforts, training for youth development and character development, implementing an evaluation and results implementation process, parental involvement, positive sports experience, activities that enhance effects beyond the playing field, like nutrition practices, academic performance, etc. If that sounds broad, it is. So the agencies will have some jurisdiction here in determining what makes sense in terms of grant applications. And I think if this legislation does become law, we'll want to spend some time meeting with the department to ensure that we are thinking the right way as we prepare applications for your organizations. Number two, activities leading to sustained increases in participation in youth sports. And again, number three, promote anything that promotes safety and health, background checks, abuse prevention, response activities. And then beyond that, what this language does is authorize HHS to establish this program, and it would award one-time competitive grants to municipalities, counties, and states to fund these efforts. So they are one-time grant awards, which would likely need to be used in that fiscal year that they're awarded. So there would probably be a period of time that funding would need to be spent by your organizations if awarded. And then some requirements that I think are important to note, GAO, and these are requirements not for the applications, but requirements for that are included in the legislation. So the Government Accountability Office, which is tasked with providing reports to Congress to give them guidance as they consider legislation, will have a requirement in this legislation to report on the history of the prior 50 years of federal programs used to help promote the effectiveness, participation, health, and safety of non-school-based organized youth sports and their effectiveness and outcomes. It will also require that HHS report on youth sports risk prevention efforts conducted or supported by HHS and other agencies, beneficial practices, and further steps that are needed to reduce the risks and increase the benefits of sports. And I think these reports will help the Appropriations Committee and us, quite frankly, to better leverage the guidance that we're getting from the GAO in how to continue to pursue this funding down the road. And then lastly, it authorizes CDC and NIH to undertake prevention efforts to advance youth sports safety. And that's pretty broad again as well, but would give us the opportunity to continue to hold the agency's feet to the fire, so to speak, vis-a-vis Congress, to make sure that they're continuing to focus on these issues moving forward once the bill becomes law. So that's kind of a snapshot of what the actual bill does. I would just mention one other thing. So obviously, we would love this bill to be passed on its own into law. As you all know, thousands of bills get introduced each Congress, and very few of them become law. I think, we are optimistic about our bill hopefully being added to a larger piece of legislation that is more comprehensive on not just youth sports, but related topics as well. So potentially, I think what's being called a child obesity omnibus bill it's been referred to, but which would include things like the FIT Act and other pieces of legislation that are relevant in this space that would be potentially packaged together. We would want our language to be included in a broad-based package like that, and perhaps voted on in that way rather than having to move our bill individually. And to do that, I think we need to continue to show broad support for our piece of legislation. So it's great that we have, an introduced bill, as Kate Carpenter points out. Really happy that we have something out there. We have one original co-sponsor, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, who was on the Appropriations Committee and cares a lot about these issues. But we need to start building out additional co-sponsors in the House, and then hopefully get a bill introduced in the Senate, so that we can then pivot when the timing is right to say, look, we've got some broad-based support here for our language. Make sure it's added to whatever the moving vehicle is before the end of the year. So I did want to underscore that the role that you all will play, hopefully, is to reach out to your delegations, your congressional offices in your district or where your organization is located, and encourage them to co-sponsor this legislation, so that when the timing is right, we can go to congressional leadership and the leadership on the appropriations and authorizing committees and say, please add our language. Here's evidence of broad-based support. That this is not a partisan issue. I think the spending is where we get a little bit of a challenge with the Republican side of the aisle. Obviously, that has been one of the challenges with programs like this in the past. But I don't think on the merits that there's any concern here. I think everyone, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, all support the goals of what we're trying to do. We just need to find some brave Republicans to co-sponsor our legislation and move and help us at least be able to convey that there is bipartisan support for this. Unfortunately, when the Kine bill was introduced, they did not have any Republican co-sponsors. So our goal here is to change that and make that we can find at least a couple of Republican co-sponsors that can help lend support to what we're trying to accomplish here. And Jared, I'll pause there for questions or any additional information.
Thank you so much, Ian and Kate, for that overview. And certainly if anyone has questions, you can please put them in the chat or use the raise hands emoji. I will note that as we were working to find an original sponsor, which Colin Allred ultimately became, and as well as Debbie Wasserman Schultz co-sponsoring prior to introduction, we, led by Klein Johnson Group, had meetings with dozens of legislators in the House and the Senate. And so we do believe that over the next few months, we'll be able to get a number of co-sponsors. We're looking for a kind of a critical mass of co-sponsors to make this meaningful and really show the support on both sides of the aisle. And I'm confident that we'll be able to do that. I also know that many of you out there have relationships with your congressional representatives as well. And so we would certainly appreciate any of the relationships that you have and the help that you might be able to provide in reaching out to those folks. I know, for instance, I see Steve Sack here. I know that you were instrumental in getting a co-sponsor for the Max Rose youth sports bill a couple years ago, based on a relationship that you had locally in Michigan. Mike with Philly Youth Sports Collaborative, I believe you also have relationships locally in Pennsylvania. So it's certainly possible that many of you know personally, or at least have some type of relationship with your congressional representative, and this would be a great opportunity to engage them, let them know that they should be supporting this and what it would mean for your organization. So with that, thank you, Bill. We actually did meet with Senator Moran, and so that could be an opportunity on the Senate side when there is a companion bill for a kind of co-sponsored opportunity. Kate,
to that point,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Jared, to that point, we are so there's two important points to flag here. One is that we very much would like to find a Senate lead to introduce an identical bill, the companion, what we call companion bill in the Senate. We have talked to several offices and have a couple, requests pending out there, but we have not locked down a sponsor yet. Obviously, a lot of the work is now done, so staff should appreciate the fact that they won't have to spend any time redrafting legislation. The bill is already crafted for them, so that should be appealing if there's interest there. The other thing is just strategically, if you look back at the Kine bill in 2015, as I mentioned, it's all Democratic co-sponsors. One thing that I think a lot of folks try to do when they're trying to move legislation, which makes sense, is try to keep a balance between Democrats and Republicans. Because I think when you get a bill that starts to load up with Democratic co-sponsors, it scares Republicans off, and quite frankly, vice versa. So we do have the two Democrats on the bill, and before we really add a super big influx of Democrats, we'd love to have a couple Republicans first. So that is a huge priority for us. And Kate, do you want to talk about, I'm sorry, I was just going to see if Kate wanted to talk about resources that we can provide that can be helpful to you all as you engage your members.
Yeah, what we can do is through Jared, send a sample email of exactly the right phrasing to request a co-sponsorship. And we can also provide you names of, like, if you tell us who your rep is, we can tell you the proper staffer to get in touch with. We are also going to be sending out a Dear Colleague, which is, well, not us, but we provide that to Allred. And what he'll do is send out, it's like, Dear Colleague, please co-sponsor my bill. And so what we can also do is send that to you guys, and you can attach that or, put it in the email text so that they know exactly what, we're talking about here. And we'll get that to you as soon as it's ready, but we can definitely get you the email text requesting co-sponsorship immediately.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I think more broadly, we can package this together into some type of kind of toolkit that we can distribute out to coalition members, making it as easy as possible for you all to reach out to your representatives and provide you with the information and equip you with the language you need to engage them. There's a lot of great suggestions in the chat and relationships here, which is great to see. Does anyone have specific questions about the PLAYS Act in youth sports, about the state-based approach, anything else that is kind of near and dear to to your hearts in terms of advocacy and legislative strategy that we should be looking into, or even more broadly, has anyone here, kind of had their own legislative agenda at the local level that they would like to kind of surface and have had success and might have some best practices and insights that they want to share with the group?
And Jared, I might add, even if they are in the process of, needing to advocate for some funding at the local or state level and need some help or support from the Play Sports Coalition, they should let us know that as well.
Hey, Jared, I was just going to add that here in Oregon, we built an incredible coalition over the COVID lockdown across the aisle, Republican, Democrats, to get kids playing, and that turned into the Let Them Play organization here in Oregon that was 25,000 members strong. So if your state has something like that, then you can lean on as a continuation of that to keeping them playing. That's incredibly valuable. And the only other thing I was going to add was that from the demographic side here in Oregon, we are predominantly a rural country with population centers in Portland, Salem, and Eugene. But obviously all of our Republican representatives are in those rural counties, which are traditionally underserved. So that's something we can lean on when we have those conversations, that let's point out that typically those most underserved areas are those rural areas, and also probably inner cities. But where I'm at on the West Coast, we don't have a lot of cities, but we have a ton of rural areas where we know it's hard to get kids into sports, continuing into sports. All of those volunteers that want to coach and be connected with those kids, it's much, much, much harder. So just something, my advice for when you're interacting with those Republican candidates, that they can't really ignore.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, that's a really impressive, the Let Them Play campaign that you were a part of, and just want to thank you for all the great work that you've done at the local level, in Southern Oregon, and Junior Comet Sports and Southern Oregon Futsal League and Rogue River Soccer and all the things that you're doing. Just very appreciative of the work you're doing at the local level. So thank you so much, Julian. Yeah, Rochelle, thanks for sharing that in the chat. I know that I referenced earlier the great work that Laureate Sport for Good Chicago did in Illinois. So that's something we certainly want to, encourage people to replicate and take the playbook. This has been working at the state level, getting into state budgets, whether it's through earmarks or direct funding, grant programs, mobile sports betting. So if there's anything that we can do to share out those best practices or surface what other folks have done, we'd love to, kind of play that role. And no pressure, Rochelle, but if there's anything that you wanted to share, you're welcome to come off of mute and do so. And if not, that's totally okay too. But anyone else can share anything related to their successes at the local level if they like. And just another call to share any questions in the chat, or you can use the raised hand emoji. Also, feel free to email us after this call, advocacy@playsportscoalition.org. I think if you just reply to any Play's email, it will be kind of directed that way. So happy to answer any other questions that might come from that. If there's nothing else kind of live, then we can probably end here, but happy to be able to share about the work that we've been doing at the local level and certainly at the federal with the Plays Act. And hopefully we'll be able to reconvene with more successes to share very soon.
And I would just end with one note, which is, as you're talking to your members of Congress and other folks in the community, obviously everyone's really excited about this reconciliation bill that is slated to pass and be signed into law, and does a lot of great things for a lot of different people, but it's not really focused on kids as much. It's focused on seniors, it's focused on energy and climate, and those are all really important, obviously. However, I think it's an opportunity to kind of highlight that we need to make sure that we are providing the resources that are necessary to help kids succeed. And you all do that every day. And there's not much time left in this Congress. And so this is the opportunity to kind of underscore that message, given that these other great things have been done, but that there's still not been a real focus on this area. So just wanted to make that point. It's just my opinion, but I think it could be useful as you're having those conversations.
And to Bill's point, given the mental health crisis.
Well, thank you, Ian and Kate, for the great work that you're doing and for this guidance and these relationships at the federal level. And thank you to everyone here for the great work you're doing at the local level, making a difference every single day. So thank you so much. And we will be in touch with next steps with more information and that toolkit that can help with our outreach. So thank you all so much. And we will be in touch with you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.